Hey guys, welcome back to the DOREMICOM channel. I'm here to go over some real basics for my party that is about to endeavor within the Lost Mines of Phandelver. Little quick tutorial on some Fantasy Ground basics. So we're going to pretend for a second that we are playing the Hilldorf Cleric, and this is what the person who's logging in to Fantasy Grounds within the server that I have running should expect. After opening up Fantasy Grounds, they'll open up to this kind of UI for the client. And there are some really important icons over on the right-hand side. Starting with up here, there's the combat tracker. Next to it is the player character sheet, or the party sheet. But I've logged in and I don't actually have a character yet, so I'm going to click on PCs and I'm going to choose the Hilldorf. If I click on the icon for the Hilldorf, I get the character sheet, effectively the digital character sheet, and it has a series of tabs on the side, starting with main. The two ones that we're going to review are main and actions at the bottom. Actions have all your combat actions as well as spells and whatnot down below. Let's go back up to the main area. Before we go too much farther, let's go ahead and show you what this icon down here is for. This is the dice tower. There are a series of dice that are along the bottom, but sometimes we'll be making a stealth skill check, which maybe I, as the DM, don't want you to know whether or not you're successful or not. In order to roll that, you left click, hold the button down, and move the three-dimensional dice into the dice tower. This shows you that you rolled a particular number, but on the DM screen on the other side, I actually know what the result was. In this case, you actually rolled a natural 20, so that stealth check went swimmingly. Not that there's a critical success, but rolling a 20 is a pretty solid number. So I have the character sheet and I have gone through a handful of things, but let's go ahead and say I'm not really super fond of this particular portrait. If I click on it, I can always go in and change the portrait to some other version. In this case, I'm a dwarf wielding a hand axe. As the DM, we've gone farther enough into the adventure where the role-playing ROLE is complete. We're about to do some combat, and I go ahead and push a particular map to everyone. Now, some information regarding this map. Sometimes it will show up much larger than you want it to be. Let's say like this. The thing you can do is move the map up at any point. If you left-click and move it, you don't have to just be at the top bar. You're going to look for this corner and size it back down to where you need it to be to fit your screen. This yellow box down here, if you left click and then move your mouse to the left, it shifts the map over to the right. You're scrolling left or you're scrolling right. Let's say in this case I want the players to go ahead and add their characters to the area that's been identified. There is a notion of fog of war within Fantasy Grounds. You can also use your mouse wheel and the control button to scroll in and get a little bit closer to the action. As the character moves around the area, we will expand or decrease the amount of fog of war as such. And the cleric has decided that he's in an area where he wants to utilize some stealth. He goes ahead and picks up that D20, drops it into the dice tower, and he thinks he's being stealthy, but not so much. And all of a sudden, he encounters two goblins who are ready to pounce. Well, we can open up the combat tracker on the player side, and when you need to roll initiative, you go to your main sheet on your character, digital character sheet, double click on the init icon. In this case, the dwarf is going to be getting initiative roll up -1. And so he gets a 7 that gets placed in the combat tracker. In this case, the goblins rolled a 3, and so the hill dwarf will get to go first. Using the combat tracker, you'll note that the player character that's going first will be highlighted. In this case, it's the hill dwarf cleric. Having a speed of 25, the cleric moves 5, 10, 15 feet, and is now in melee range of both goblins. But he wants to target a particular goblin. In this case, he'll target goblin number 1 because he doesn't want the goblin to get away. To target your opponent within the combat tracker, hold down the control button and left click your opponent's portrait. You'll notice within the combat tracker, it actually states that you're targeting goblin 1. Once you have that set up, you'll go back to your character sheet, go down to actions, and he's decided to swing his warhammer. So by clicking on the 20-sided die here, Fantasy Grounds handles all the rest of the calculations. So he rolls a 3, he adds his +4 modifier. Unfortunately, an attack of 7 is a miss at goblin 1. But let's go ahead and say that he rolled a 14, and now we'll note that the attack against goblin 1 is a hit. The next thing for the player to do is to double click on the actual damage dice roll, which is here, right next to the to hit die roll. Double clicking here, he rolls a 1, and again, Fantasy Ground takes care of everything involved. The hill dwarf modifier is a +2, so he's done 3 points of damage, and that damage is automatically calculated and placed within the combat tracker against goblin 1, which we now see is wounded. The player would then come down to the turn complete area within the combat tracker, and goblin 1 turn would commence. So again, this is just a very basic overview of Fantasy Grounds. I hope this is helpful, and we'll see everyone on Wednesday.